So I've spent the last 25 years or so, which makes me feel really old when I say it that way, leading design teams at some of the world's largest organizations. And the challenge, really, though, has always been the same, despite the differences in those organizations. And that is how we get from cash to an experience, right? I, as a design leader, have a budget for my design team, as do my product management and technology partners. And using that budget, we need to create an experience. Now, when you're in a smaller organization or a startup, you can just hire a couple of designers and say, hey, design me an experience, design me a website or an app, and that kind of works. But as you scale organizations and as your ecosystem becomes more complex, you need a little bit more framework to that. And as I've looked back over the 25 years, I've been in 4 large organizations here in the States. I've seen some patterns emerge, and that's what I want to walk you through today. And so I've over-dramatically created what I'm calling the ziggurat of impact, which are these different layers that frame up the different systems and programs that we put together. And I'm going to walk through each of these from the bottom up this morning. So let's start with the lowest layer, the taxonomy. And I think it's important to recognize first that one does not simply design experiences. In fact, I don't think we design experiences at all. An experience is something that somebody has, not necessarily something we actively make. In fact, as one of my colleagues, Alexa Curtis, who's here in the audience somewhere, Alexa, where are you? There she is very fond of saying, Alexa, you're going to see a lot of your work in this presentation. An experience is the sum of a person in a situation interacting with a bunch of systems. And then they have an experience. The experience is the outcome. So what are those systems? Right? That's where we put a taxonomy together. So at Verizon, those systems start with our consumer products, the things we make that people buy and use. They can be physical things like routers and gateways and watches and speaker bars. They can be virtual products like our cloud storage services or call filter services. They can even be our data plans, right? The mobile phone plan that you use for your connectivity or your home data plan for your connectivity. And those products are interacted through touch points, cross channels, right? Digital ones, websites, apps, retail ones in our stores, call centers where people call in and talk to associates. Right? These are the moments where interactions happen between our customers and Verizon. Sometimes these can be internal employee touch points. We're responsible for the design of those too. We also have shared capabilities, things that we have identified are common to many products or touch points that we just want to design and code once, like authentication, personalization. Even our Verizon design system, the Lego blocks that we build digital systems from, is a shared capability. And then the final piece is our customer activities. This is a newer piece, and this is something we're doing to really help us stay very customer-centric. These are the kind of jobs to be done, if you will, from a customer perspective, right? They wake up in the morning, they think, I'm going to do X with Verizon. I'm going to get the new phone with Verizon because the new one just came out, or my old one's broken, or I just got paid. I'm going to pay my bill with Verizon today, or I just moved. I'm going to change my address at Verizon. This is our inventory of customer activities. Actually, these are just the sales and service customer activities, right? We have a whole other set that we're building of use customer activities where people are using our products on a daily basis, like using our cloud storage services or our call filter, or using their data to receive a text, make a call, doom scroll on TikTok, whatever, right? I do have a confession to make, though. This taxonomy is still a work in progress, and it only really represents the top 10% of the iceberg above the water when it comes to doing customer experience in a large enterprise. There's an incredible amount in the rest of the enterprise that still has an impact on the customer experience. In order to just drive that point home, I'm going to tell you a quick story of Dr. David Dow. You're like, who the heck is Dr. David Dow? When I remind you of this story, many of you will remember what happened a few years ago. So this is Dr. David Dow, and he was trying to get from Chicago O'Hare Airport to Louisville, Kentucky, on the last United Airlines flight of the day a few years ago, back in 2017, I think it was. That flight was completely full, and the issue was that United also needed to get 4 crew members to Louisville from Chicago so that they could crew a flight out of Louisville the next day. So they asked what most airlines do, hey, would anybody like to get off the plane, because they were actually boarded at this point, would anybody like to get off the plane and take the next flight the next day, which is like 20 hours later? We'll give you, we'll put you up overnight in a hotel, give you a meal, we'll give you $400 in, vouchers for travel. Crickets, right? Nobody wanted to get off. How about $800? Somebody please get off the plane for $800. Nope, everybody wanted to blow dodge and get out of Chicago and get back to Louisville. Then they said, okay, well, we're going to pick 4 of you. We're going to use an algorithm. We're going to pick 4 of you, and you have to get off. And so they used an algorithm. I'm pretty sure it didn't select any, Platinum Club members or anything like that. And they said, oh, you've got to get off. 3 people got off. Dr. Dow did not. He said, I'm a doctor. I have a practice in Louisville where I live. I've got people I'm seeing next day. I can't get off the plane. So United sent onto the plane some members of the O'Hare Airport Aviation Security Force, one may say, I don't know, thugs, who essentially assaulted Dr. Dow, dragged him unconscious and bleeding because they smashed his head against the armrest as they were dragging him off the plane, in front of course, everybody on the plane that, recording it on their phones and frantically posting to social media. I think we can agree this is not a great customer experience, right? Anybody involved, particularly Dr. Dow, nor the other passengers, nor the staff, even for the CEO and chairman of United, who at first blamed Dr. Dow for being the one at fault, and then the next day had to completely recant that and issue another apology for that, as well as what actually happened. The interesting thing is that none of this really was the fault of the touch points, the customer products, or the shared capabilities. It was a failure of process, business rules, policy, maybe even training deep in the United hierarchy. The fact that United could only offer $800, their policy was to not go above $800 to incentivize people to get off the plane. They've actually, because of this incident, changed that now. The gate staff can now offer up to $10,000, which they've offered a couple of times, never when I'm flying, to get people off the plane if they need the seats. Right? So it's worthwhile just remembering that the taxonomy, as good as it is, and as foundational as it is for what I'm going to talk to in the rest of this morning, is only the top 10%. But okay, back to the ziggurat. So that's the taxonomy. We know the systems. How do we know whether they're any good or not? We need a measurement layer. Okay? Oh, so many acronyms. In order to meet my Verizon acronym quota, I had to include all these on the slide. So we've got NPS, Net Promoter Score. We've got DIS. We've got RIS. We've got Product Interaction Score, which I've been told under no circumstances to make into an acronym. We've got Customer Satisfaction, and we've got Customer Activity Score. So hands up, who knows what NPS, or Net Promoter Score, is? Well, keep your hands up if you'd recommend it to a family member or a friend. No? So many detractors. So for those of you that don't know what NPS is, you ask a simple question like, would you recommend, on a scale of 0 to 10, would you recommend product or service to a family member or a friend? Those that score you 0 to 6 are detractors. Those that score you 7 to 8, you ignore because they're neutrals. Those that score 9 or 10 are promoters. And to get the score, you subtract the number of detractors from the number of promoters, creating a theoretical score of negative 100 to positive 100. I'm not going to get into the validity or usefulness of NPS as a broader business tool, mainly because we're already behind and I don't have all day up here. But what I will say is that from a CX and a design perspective, it's not that useful because it's a trailing metric and it's huge. There's a lot that goes into it. So figuring out the impact of your actual experience and designs on your NPS is very, very difficult. In fact, Jeff Gotthealth, who's created a lot of great articles and commentary on this, I've included one of his articles up here, is much more fond of saying, ask yourself this question, right? What is the behavior, right? What do satisfied customers do in our product? Measure that instead, right? Do they buy more? Do they tell more people, right? Do they spend a lot of time in your product or a little bit of time in your product, depending on what's good for your product? I'm also fond of asking the inverse question, what do dissatisfied customers do in our product? and measure that, right? Do they leave quickly? Do they complain a lot? Do they hop channels, right? They're trying to do something on digital, they can't figure it out, so then they call you, right? And that's what our DIS and RIS, which is a digital interaction score and retail interaction score, try and do. They try and take small pieces of the experience. They ask people, hey, were you able to do this task satisfactorily? If not, why not? Give us some feedback, and we can use that to gauge the health of our experience. Same thing with our product interaction score, which is really focusing on that use. This is a newer measure, which we're trying to focus on the use aspect of our products. Customer satisfaction, similar thing, but in the call centers. And then customer activity score, which we're trying to create these dashboards for our customer activities. It's a work in progress, fake one, obviously, that reflect how easy it was or how satisfied people are trying to do that holistic, activity that they wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to, get the new phone from Verizon. Okay, so that's measurement. Let's think now about the work, the portfolio, right? Who knows what this is? It's a risk map, right? The game Risk, world domination. You put your armies and your cavalry and your cannons in the countries and go to battle to see who can dominate the globe. You can put one army in a country, or you can put a big stack of armies in a country if you can do a lot of work there. This is our risk map at Verizon. This is our portfolio coverage. All that stuff on the taxonomy, the touch points, the products, the capabilities, right? We've got touch points on the left here, products on the right, capabilities towards the bottom somewhere, where we've broken it out into more manageable portfolio chunks. And this is what we work on. This is our universe. And the color coding indicates how well staffed a particular area is. Black, there's nobody home, right? Nobody paying attention. Red, we've got somebody keeping kind of half an eye on it. Yellow, it's okay. We've got a couple of people there. And green, fully staffed, right? Now you can see there's a lot of black and red and yellow on our map at the moment. That's okay. The goal is not to turn the whole thing green. For one, that would create a huge design team and actually would generate way more design than the rest of the organization could handle, right? This is useful to get alignment with our product and technology partners to say, hey, where are we putting people? It's useful for prioritization, right? I can use it as a leader when one of my colleagues comes to me and says, hey, I just got this customer escalation complaint about this thing that's happening. I can pull this out and be like, well, that's in one of these black boxes, and we got nobody paying attention. I could put people there, and then we'd have to put product management and engineering people there too, but we'd have to pull them from somewhere else. So let's have that conversation. Also useful to help show the impact of increased design funding, right? Because I can now show boxes going, black boxes going red boxes going yellow boxes going green over time, right? The other aspect of portfolio is what type of work we're doing. All the work in those boxes is not the same. Sometimes we're doing visioning work. Sometimes we're doing kind of optimization work. Sometimes we're doing execution work. Again, helpful for setting expectations with our partners about how long it takes to do these things. Helpful for understanding the skill sets we need to do the different types of work. Even helpful for understanding the type of money we can spend. So my design team is funded from both OpEx, or operational expense dollars, and CapEx, capital expenditure dollars. Different in the way that things show up on the company books, right? If we're building assets that can show up on the balance sheet that could be depreciated over time, we can spend capital dollars on that. And so that gives us a lot more flexibility in funding. It's mainly this work in the middle that is capitalizable work. So that's the portfolio. How do we get that work done? Let's think about process. I'm a big fan of the baby bear methodology of process, right? Not too much, not too little, just the right amount. So we've been spending a lot of time, Alexa has been spending a lot of time helping put practices in place, not just for the design team, but for the product management and engineering teams as well, on something we're calling the way of working, right? How we do our ways of working. Many, many different things to consider. I'm just highlighting 4 here. We've been very much adopting a product model to our way of working, right? Back in the day, there's a big list of projects, big pool of resources, and we used to assign the designers to the projects, right? The project was finished, they go back in the pool, assign them to a different thing, right? Not very agile, right? Not very product thinking, You don't build up institutional knowledge. You don't allow people to form relationships with their partners in product management or engineering. So now we have a product model organized around the portfolio and the coverage map, the risk map I just showed, which allows people to have a little bit of stability in what they're working on and build up knowledge around what they're working on. We've also done work around who has the ACTs, the Agile Collaboration Teams. These are our teams that actually put their hands on code and change the code. Right? Until we made some of these changes, everybody had an ACT, and they could kind of change anything they wanted. Right? So we'd have a web page with an ACT would come along and change something on the web page, and then another ACT would come along and undo that thing on the web page, or change something else. Although two ACTs would come along and try and do the same thing to a web page or a mobile app. Right? It was very kind of Wild Westy. Now we've got much more clear ownership around the product model. So each box on the taxonomy has an ACT that can change that, and only that ACT can change that piece of the experience, that piece of the system. What that has also done is meant that we need to put some prioritization governance in place, because we want to empower our ACTs and empower our product teams to have ownership of those pieces of the system that they're working on and to improve them. Let's say we've got one focused on the checkout process. We want them to be able to spend some of their capacity making that the best online checkout process they can from a local kind of optimization perspective. We also have to make sure that they've got some capacity to do broader global things. Let's say we've got a big product launch for a new product coming that needs some changes to the checkout process made to accommodate this new product, as well as changes across a whole bunch of other parts of the ecosystem. So each team has to kind of juggle these global versus local priorities, and we put some governance in place in order to do that. And then one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from our teams when we ask them for feedback is about clarity of roles and responsibilities. So we've done a lot of work there too, right? Understanding, for example, what is the role of a customer activity owner from a kind of a product management perspective versus a customer activity design lead. Who does what, right? Who builds the service design blueprints, right? Who gathers the information, who identifies the points of pain. So we've done some work to kind of try and tease those things apart so we can have better collaboration. We've also thought a little bit about ratios, right? No point having a bunch of designers if you don't have any product managers or engineers, or vice versa, which is probably more common. So we need to get those ratios correct. All right, so now we have ways of doing stuff. Let's finish by talking about arguably the most important layer, the people. I know it's the narrowest in the ziggurat, but if you don't have great people, then the rest of it doesn't really work at all. Many, many different facets from a people perspective. I'm just highlighting 5 or 6 here. Diversity, obviously hugely important for us. Not only is it the right thing to do from a human perspective, it actually is proven to create higher performing teams. We think about all aspects of diversity on the team. We are challenged from a diversity perspective in different ways in our different geographies. So in India, for example, we have a large design team in India. The thing that we are most challenged with there is gender diversity, ensuring we have equitable representation of women in the design team and at design leadership levels. Right? In the US, of course, we're still very concerned about gender diversity, but actually on the design team, we're very well represented there. That's not our major focus. Our major focus in the US is on racial diversity across the design team and design leadership team. So that's what we focus on. As I mentioned, we're geographically dispersed. Here in New York, we have teams right next to Freedom Tower, and teams out in Baskin Ridge headquarters. In India, we have teams in Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bengaluru, which is the new name for Bangalore. And we have some contractor teams down in Costa Rica as well. So we think about how we leverage the kind of global workforce, what each team specializes in, where our center for excellences are. In India, for example, a lot of our teams there have deep, deep institutional knowledge about our employee experiences, those internal-facing experiences and systems, and so a lot of that is done there. We also have tremendous front-end development resources there, so a lot of our design system engineering work is done in India, for example. Labor types, we leverage full-time employees, contractors, and agency resources. We are underrepresented with full-time employees right now. I could tell you the exact percentage, but my communications colleagues who reviewed this deck and presentation before I came here said I would have to kill you all if I told you that. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to say it's below 30%. How about that? which we think is unsustainable for an internal design team. Fortunately, our leadership agrees, and we're actually just started to flip that. We want to get to 70%, 70%, probably by the end of next year, maybe 55% by the end of this year. And so we're hiring 180 designers in the US and India by the end of the year. Lots of recs open, just saying. Come find myself or Alexa, or Ishu, or Andrew, who's in the third row here. We'll be here all day. Resumes on a postcard, please. Skill sets, we have the full range of skill sets that you'd assume for an internal design team, right? Visual design, interaction design, information architecture, content strategy, front-end development, research, service design. Because of our customer activity work, we're hiring out from a service design perspective as well. Again, just saying. We're not just building a team, we're building a culture of design. We're a big enough organization, Verizon, and a big enough team, and growing, that we want to build a thriving design culture, right? Where people can be curious, where people can experience different roles, different products. You know, we have a vast range of different things. I say we build hardware, we build software, we build services, external, internal. And so we want to build that thriving design culture, so we put a lot of effort into that, and it's very important. We invest in programs to do that. And then performance management. I was once told by one of my best bosses, way back at Vanguard, that feedback is a gift. I think he might have been giving me some feedback at the time when he said that, but it still counts. I very much still follow that philosophy. The challenge with large design organizations, or large organizations of any discipline really, is that when you've got dozens of people managers, you need to ensure that the feedback you're giving and the expectations and standards that you're holding people to are consistent and unbiased. And so we put a lot of effort into creating systems for ourselves that can kind of, using anonymous data, calibrate our people managers to have the same expectations, so that when they're working, so when a lead designer has been led by Adam over here and a lead designer has been led by Alex over here, they both are receiving the same set of expectations and being evaluated against the same criteria. Indra Clavins, my former head of design operations, did an excellent post on this a couple of months ago. I put the link here, well worth a read. It's 100% true. We're still using it today. In fact, I think I have time for a quick anecdote. One of my cousins, who isn't in the design space, works out in Portland for a company, and she texted me. She's like, "Hey, I just saw this article on LinkedIn that you were referenced in about this calibration thing." She's like, "Normally, I would just attribute that to like complete LinkedIn BS, but since you're LinkedIn, is it true?" I was like, "It's 100% true, and we still use it today." She's like, "Wow, I found an article on LinkedIn that's 100% true." It's great. So that's how we get from cold hard cash to an experience, right? We inventory our systems, we unpack them so we know what we're working on, we put measurement on top of them so we know what's good and what's not good. We build portfolios of teams. To do that, we give those teams processes and best practices, and we staff them with awesome people. Now, since I mentioned design operations, one last thing. None of this happens by itself, right? It takes effort, it takes work. You've got to build out an effective operations team. You've got to invest in that. That's that's an investment. That's a, yeah, woo, hey, for design operations. That is an investment that pays back multiple-fold, right? It really multiplies the value and the effectiveness of your teams. And honestly, then it keeps the designers doing what they do best, which is designing, right? Which is what we want to try and do. So thank you very much for listening. Did I hit 0 right on the mark? That's pretty impressive, right?
I mean, I'm impressed.
All right.
I feel like you're trying to hit their bar, not my bar.
Yeah. I hit the mark.
Yeah. So that was phenomenal. Thank you. I think in the time that we have for Q&A here, at least for me personally, what I'm interested in is it's fairly similar to what's here. I think there are a lot of people that are interested in that 180 number that you threw out there, which is going to keep you busy here today.
It is.
I'm curious about where at a high level, where do you think UX is headed compared to where it's been? just as a role, as a discipline?
Yeah, where UX is going over the next 5 years, I mean, I'm not going to say AI, because there's too much conversation around that.
Even though you legitimately just said it.
Well, yeah. I won't talk about it then. How about that? What I will say is I think that what I said, the story about the United story with Dr. Dow is, I think, symptomatic of what happens a lot in organizations. Maybe not to quite that extreme example. And so I think from a UX and a design perspective, it behooves us to not just design the UI, right? Not just to design the products and services, the things people, but to design the organization at a deeper level, right? And to really think about the influence we can have on everybody else in the organization, right? Within Verizon, we have like 100,000 employees, and currently 300 or 400 in the design team. But every single one of those employees has an impact to some degree on the customer experience. So raising that level of awareness, right, that everything everybody does ultimately has a domino-like impact on the customer experience is, I think, where design and UX needs to go. Because otherwise, we're just going to be fighting with, arms tied behind our back.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's more of kind of getting woven into the fabric of the company writ large.
Exactly.
Love that. Also love any presentation that has a pyramid in it. Kind of a sucker for that. I don't know about y'all. So as far as 180 slots are open, there's an interesting question about like how that number was kind of pegged. Can you talk to us a little bit about like what some of the maths associated with that might be?
Yeah. Well, so we know the design team has been growing over the past couple of years. So we know what our kind of total budget is. We know how we spend that across our labor types. So we know where the type of target we want to get to, 70%. So we kind of did the math of like how much of the contractor and agency budget would we have to flip into headcount in order to get to a 70% ratio of FTEs. What do we think is achievable this year? Now, candidly, we had hoped to have the full 12 months to achieve 180 people by the end of the year. We only opened Rex last week, so we're now got, 7 or 8 months left. So we think that's aggressive, and so we will be going into next year to try and get to that 70% ratio. But it was really just math in terms of how much do we have to flip over, because we're doing it, by the way, at 0 incremental cost, right? It's not costing us a penny more, and we're actually getting 20% more labor, more resources. So the coverage map that I showed with the black, red, and the green and the yellow is going to improve just because we're switching the labor mix. So it's got multiple benefits, not just to the design team, but to the organization as well.
I mean, I loved all your slides, but my favorite was the portfolio mapping. I really loved the color coding there, and it sounds like your response is kind of a combination of CapEx and OpEx and trying to recalibrate based on the needs of the business.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard.
Thank you.